Here's how to study for USMLE Step 1 or COMLEX Level 1 during a pandemic, when you don't know when you'll get to take your test. Prometric announced last week that testing centers in the US and Canada will remain closed through May 31st on account of prolonged COVID-19 social distancing efforts and guidelines by the CDC. Essential service programs, however, are scheduled to reopen on May 1st, operating at half capacity. That means that some students may have an opportunity to sit for their USMLE or COMLEX exams, but many will not. For students waiting to take USMLE Step 1 or COMLEX Level 1, this may be your second time having to reschedule a high-stakes and highly anticipated exam. This may leave behind feelings of frustration and uncertainty about the future. If you are one of these students, you are certainly not alone. However, you may be wondering, how am I supposed to effectively study for an exam that keeps getting pushed back? While there's no magic answer to that question, and you can't just look up Step 1 study schedule in the event of a pandemic online, there are a few things that you can do to keep yourself both sane and on track when you do finally get to take your test. First, take a deep breath and then take a couple days off. Your test date was just canceled a second time, and it's perfectly justified to take some time to process all the disappointment and stress you may be feeling. As cliche as it sounds, have a guilt-free Netflix marathon, call your friends and vent, or engage in your favorite hobby. You've certainly earned it. Once you've recharged a little bit, the single best thing you can do to keep your knowledge fresh is get back into your UWorld grind, but this time scale it back a little bit. Before this whole crisis, you were likely studying 10+ hours per day and following a very strict study schedule leading up to your test date. You should have already gotten through all the material you had planned to, and now it's time to take a victory lap. If you know anything about races, you know that a victory lap isn't run at full speed. Don't burn yourself out by indefinitely trying to keep the same intense studying pace you were at during your dedicated study period. While it's important not to just stop studying and expect yourself to remember everything when your test day finally comes, spending 5 to 7 hours a day reviewing fundamental concepts via flashcards and doing UWorld one last time is a great idea. The bottom line is that it's important to stick to a realistic schedule that you are prepared to commit to in the long term. Don't go into overdrive thinking that now is your chance to study like crazy and get a super high score. With a shifting test date, you will burn yourself out and potentially risk a poorer score. As a reminder, we also don't recommend trying to introduce new study resources into your schedule at this time. As long as your NBMEs have been good until now, stick with whatever QBank you've been using and continue reviewing your flashcards. As a final tip, don't get hung up on trying to learn everything, and don't hyper-focus on your weaker areas at the expense of your review of the fundamentals. Stick to a schedule, try to stay positive, and don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need any help.